In November 1941, an incident occurred near Volokolamsk that defied every German field manual. Wehrmacht intelligence reported that the road to Moscow was open, blocked only by a single Soviet tank that remained silent. They were certain the Russian monster had run out of fuel or its main gun had jammed. It was a fatal error, and an entire battalion paid for it with their lives. Lieutenant Remizov's crew was indeed out of ammunition, but what happened next was described in German officer reports as barbarism, and by engineers as a genius application of the strength of materials. How did 4 men turn a forest into a giant mousetrap? Why did the commander order his driver to forget he was in a tank and act like a hydraulic press operator? And why, when Soviet sappers found the machine in the spring of 1942, were there no bodies inside, while the surrounding German tanks looked like they had been hit by a freight train, despite not a single shot being fired? This story proves that physics can kill more effectively than gunpowder. November 1941. The Volokolamsk direction. The thermometer reads -30 degrees Celsius. At such temperatures, war ceases to be an art of maneuver and turns into a tensile strength test for materials. The air rings with the frost like a taut string ready to snap. Transmission grease thickens into a viscous glue that resists every movement of the gears. Metal becomes brittle as glass. In these conditions, any miscalculation is paid for not just with a breakdown, but with instant death. Lieutenant Ilya Remizov of the Engineering Corps stands by the hull of his KV-1 tank. It is not just a combat vehicle.
It is 47 tons of alloy steel coated in a crust of ice. A white ghost in a white forest. Remizov is not a tanker by vocation. He is an engineer. He views the world not through a targeting reticle, but through force vectors, stress diagrams, and the laws of thermodynamics. To him, this forest is not scenery, but a complex engineering structure. The road is not a transport route, but the sole axis along which the enemy can direct his strike. The situation on the map resembles a structural failure analysis. The front is cracking. Supply lines are severed. Depots are empty, like gutted animals. The battalion commander spreads a map on the hood of a truck. The paper crunches in the frost. The red arrows of the German offensive look like slashed arteries. The 10th Panzer Division of the Wehrmacht, hundreds of units of equipment, motorized infantry, artillery, breakthrough tanks. A steel torrent moving toward Moscow with the inevitability of an avalanche. The battalion commander looks up at Remizov. There is no hope in his eyes, only a dry statement of fact. The order is rigid. Delay the column, buy time, at any cost. But the price has already been paid, and there are no goods to show for it. Logistics died somewhere under bombing raids in the rear. Remizov silently runs his hand over the icy armor of the turret. He knows what is inside. He knows every item in his inventory, and the arithmetic is lethal. 8 armor-piercing shells. 8. Not 80, not a crate, not a full load. Just 8 steel slugs for an entire German division. Half a tank of diesel fuel. Enough for an hour of active maneuvering or 3 hours of idling. After that, silence. You have no ammo, Ilya. The commander's voice sounds hollow, his words dissolving in the steam rising from his mouth. You have nothing to shoot with, but you have 47 tons of steel. Think. You're an engineer. Turn that weight into a weapon. Remizov looks at the map, then shifts his gaze to the forest. He sees what is hidden from the eyes of an infantryman. He sees potential energy. The ancient spruces lining the road are not trees to him right now. They are vertical beams possessing colossal mass. The slope hanging over the road is an inclined plane with the perfect angle for an avalanche. And his tank, the heavy KV-1, is not a firing point. It is a tool. It is a hydraulic press. It is a mobile counterweight. An invisible switch clicks in his head. There is no fear. Emotions are shut down, cut off like unnecessary power consumers in an emergency grid. Only cold calculation remains. If the enemy cannot be destroyed by fire, he must be crushed by mass. If there is no gunpowder, gravity must be used. The kinetic energy of 47 tons, multiplied by velocity and slope, produces an impulse capable of breaking any defense. This is battlefield physics in its purest form. The crew waits for orders. The men in the tank are no longer just soldiers. They are part of the mechanism. Their faces are gray with fatigue and cold. Fingers, calloused from contact with freezing metal, grip levers and handles. Inside the tank, the temperature is below freezing. Breath settles as frost on the instruments, turning dials into blind white spots. They look at their commander. In their eyes is a silent question. How do we stop an armada with 8 shells? Remizov makes no promises. He makes no speeches about the motherland or duty. Pathos is out of place here. It will not keep them warm, nor will it stop a shell. The lieutenant speaks the language of mechanics. Listen to the objective. Remizov's voice cuts through the frosty air. No shells. Fuel is tight. We will not engage in an artillery duel. We are going to build a trap. He pulls out a clipboard and quickly, with stiff fingers, sketches a diagram. 3 lines. The vector of the column's movement. The point of force application. The angle of incidence. Driver, he addresses the man at the controls, a former tractor operator who feels the diesel engine like his own heart. Forget you're driving a tank. Today you're operating a bulldozer. We need to climb that slope up there, 30-degree incline. The ground is frozen a meter deep. Track grip will be minimal. One mistake with the throttle, and we slide sideways. The driver looks at the slope. The forest is dense, dark, impregnable. Comrade Lieutenant, the engine won't pull it. The oil is thick, the clutches are slipping. We'll stall out there. We won't stall, Remizov cuts him off. We use inertia. We take a running start from the hollow. Engine at maximum RPM. You have to drive these 47 tons to the top, otherwise we are just targets down here. We will become the rock that starts the landslide. It is a theorem of necessity. Given, an enemy outnumbering them by hundreds, to prove, the enemy shall not pass. The solution lies not in the plane of military tactics, but in the plane of the strength of materials. The KV-1 tank must become the lock that seals the gorge. Remizov understands this is a one-way ticket. Statistically, there are no chances of survival in such a battle. But his brain works like a computer, discarding the variable crew survival as irrelevant to solving the equation. The priority is the result. Stopping the column, creating a bottleneck, disrupting the Wehrmacht's schedule. Every minute won is a life saved in the rear. Every liter of German gasoline burned while idling is a tank that failed to reach Moscow. Silence stands around them, a silence unique to a winter forest before battle. It presses on the ears. One can hear the bark on the trees cracking from the frost. One can hear the tank's exhaust manifold cooling, making distinct ticking sounds. This silence is deceptive. Beyond the horizon, the engines of the 10th Panzer are already roaring. Thousands of pistons pumping mixture,
thousands of wheels and tracks grinding the Russian snow. They come confidently, brazenly, knowing their superiority. They do not know one thing. Ahead of them waits not an army, but an engineering calculation. Remizov folds the map. His movements are sparse and precise. Positions! Start up! The engine of the KV-1 coughs, spitting out a cloud of black, oily smoke, and begins to build RPMs. The roar of 12 cylinders tears the frosty silence apart. The tank shudders, shaking snow from its armor like a waking beast. The tracks bite into the frozen earth, striking sparks. 47 tons of steel begin moving to meet physics, to either refute its laws or affirm them with their own destruction. The trap begins to set. The V2K engine roars, choking on diesel, as 47 tons of metal begin the assault on the 30-degree slope. This is not driving.
This is a struggle between two physical quantities, torque and gravity. The 700-millimeter wide tracks gnaw into the frozen soil, breaking the ice crust. The treads tear off the top layer of soil, reaching down to the stones, striking sheaves of sparks that instantly die in the frigid air. The tank goes up in jerks, its whole body shuddering like a living creature in the agony of overexertion. Inside the turret, there is a din that bursts eardrums. Vibration transmits through the steel floor into the soles of boots, rising higher, making teeth chatter. The driver, gripping the control levers, is cursing, but the words are inaudible, only the movement of lips in the semi-darkness. He fights the clutches, trying to keep the machine on course. The slightest error in dosing the gas and the heavy rear of the vehicle will pull it down into an uncontrolled slide to the foot of the hill.
The cooling system is working at its limit. The needles on the gauges crawl into the red zone, threatening to overheat even in this bitter cold. They reach the calculated point. It is a narrow terrace on the slope, hanging over the road like a theater balcony. But instead of spectators, there are ancient spruces, 3 giant trunks, their roots going deep into the rocky soil. They stand at the very edge of the precipice, leaning over the roadbed. Remizov evaluates them not as a botanist, but as a demolition engineer. The trunk diameter at the base is over ½ a meter. Height is about 30 meters. The mass of each tree is several tons. If dropped correctly, they will block the defile tightly, creating an obstacle impossible to clear without heavy equipment. "Stop engine," Remizov commands over the intercom. The tank freezes, shrouded in a cloud of blue exhaust. The lieutenant opens the hatch. Cold air hits his face like an icy slap, instantly drying the sweat on his forehead. He climbs out onto the armor, slippery with frost. His boots slide on the metal. Remizov inspects the material. The spruces are frozen through. The wood is now hard as stone and brittle as cast iron. This is perfect for the task. Viscous wood would bend and spring back. Frozen wood will snap with a dry crack if the force vector is applied to the right point. "What are we doing, Commander?" The head of the driver pops out of the hatch. His face is black with soot, eyes watering. "Why did we climb up here? This is a suicide position. No room to maneuver, no cover." "We aren't going to shoot from here," Remizov answers, jumping down into the snow and walking to the nearest spruce. He pats the rough bark with a mittened hand. "We are going to work as lumberjacks." "A tank isn't an axe, Comrade Lieutenant. A tank is 47 tons of kinetic energy. Listen to the order." Turn the machine stern toward the trees. Brace the rear armor plate right here, a meter off the ground. We need to fracture the root system, but not fell the trunk yet. Understood? Fracture. Create tension. "Are we tankers or a logging crew?" The driver grumbles, but dives back into the hatch. Jeweler's work with a blunt instrument begins. The KV-1, growling and clanking its tracks, starts to back up. The rear armor plate touches the trunk of the first spruce. Metal scrapes against bark. "Go! Little gas! Smoothly!" Remizov commands, standing to the side and signaling the distance with gestures. The tank pushes. The engine howls with effort, taking up the suspension travel. The hull squats on its haunches. The spruce shudders. Snow dust rains down from the branches, covering the tank in a white shroud. A terrible, visceral sound is heard, wood fibers snapping inside the trunk. The sound is like a rifle shot, but dull and drawn out.
The root system, bound by frozen earth, begins to give way. The tree leans another couple of degrees, creaking threateningly. "Stop!" Remizov yells. "Enough! Next one!" They repeat the procedure 3 times. 3 spruces now stand on a prayer, held only by the remains of unbroken fibers and frozen resin. Their centers of gravity have shifted. Now they are cocked hammers. A light push, a bump from a bumper, is enough for gravity to finish what was started, and tons of timber will crash down. The tank becomes the trigger mechanism of a giant mousetrap. The crew works in silence, choking on the icy air. Steam from their mouths settles as frost on eyebrows and eyelashes. Hands touching the cold metal of wrenches or cables go numb instantly, losing sensitivity. Every movement requires an effort of will. Loosening a bolt becomes a feat. Tightening a track becomes hard labor. But no one complains. There is no room for self-pity here. There is only the mission and the organism's resource, which is being consumed as relentlessly as the fuel in the tanks. Preparing the position takes an hour. An hour at -30 is an eternity. When the work is finished, the tank takes its place in ambush slightly above the fractured trees. It stands so that with one lunge forward, it can strike the first trunk, starting a chain reaction fall. The domino effect, only instead of tiles, there are ship-mast pines, and instead of a table, a column of enemy equipment. Remizov climbs back into the turret. It isn't much warmer inside, but there is no wind. The steel walls accumulate cold, turning the fighting compartment into a refrigeration chamber. The loader sits on an ammo crate, hugging himself and rocking to keep warm. The radio operator breathes on his fingers, trying to restore their mobility. "Kill the engine," the lieutenant orders. "Save fuel." The roar of the motor cuts off. Absolute, ringing silence sets in. One can only hear the metal cooling, clicking and crackling like an angry crab. And in this silence, the creaking of the fractured trees is distinct. They groan under their own weight, complaining of the violence. "The trap is set," Remizov says quietly, looking through the periscope. Now begins the hardest part. Waiting. This is also part of the engineering calculation. The durability of metal is known. The yield strength of steel is written in handbooks. But the tensile strength of human nerves is a variable quantity. The crew must become part of the machine. Freeze. Cool down. Cease to be people and become a function of waiting. Remizov looks at his watch. The second hand moves in jerks, measuring the time until potential energy converts to kinetic. Down below, on the road, it is empty for now. But the ground is already trembling. Vibration transmits through the tree roots into the tank hull. The beast is approaching. The sound gets closer. First, it is just a tremor of the earth, transmitting through the roots into the tracks, and from there into the steel hull. Then an acoustic wave appears. In the frosty air, denser now than usual, sound travels faster and sharper. It is not a hum, it is a crackle. The characteristic, unmistakable crackle of opposed cylinder BMW and Zundap motorcycle engines.
high RPMs, sharp revving, the sound of alien machinery working like a well-tuned clock mechanism. Ilya Remizov presses his face to the rubber brow pad of the observation periscope. The optics are frozen. The glass is covered with a thin film of frost, and he has to wipe it with his finger, leaving a quickly vanishing trail of warmth. In the narrow sector of view, the vanguard appears. 3 motorcycles with sidecars. On each, an MG-34 machine gun. Behind them, a half-track armored personnel carrier, a Hanomag.
It moves heavily, swaying over bumps, its front wheels cutting the hard-packed snow, while the tracks in the back pack down the rut. Panzer Grenadiers sit in the open bed. They are wrapped in greatcoats, collars turned up, hiding their faces from the icy wind. Their helmeted heads are down. No one looks to the sides. Cold is the best camouflage. It forces a man to shrink, to narrow his field of vision to a small tunnel in front of him. "Commander, target at 12 o'clock, distance 200, the gunner whispers. His hand rests on the elevation flywheel. His thumb trembles over the electric trigger button. The temptation to shoot is great. It is a reflex honed by months of war. See a gray silhouette with a cross? Hit it. The range is point blank. It is impossible to miss. A 76mm high-explosive shell would turn the APC into a burning pile of metal, and the shockwave would sweep the motorcyclists away. It is an easy kill. Too easy.
"Belay that," Remizov's voice sounds in the headsets, quietly but firmly, like the click of a bolt. "Safety on. Observe." Tension hangs inside the tank, dense as water at depth. The crew doesn't understand. Why are we letting them go? This is the enemy. He is right here, in the crosshairs. But Remizov thinks not in categories of a single shot. He thinks in categories of resources. He has 8 armor-piercing shells, 8 cylinders of hardened steel filled with explosives. To spend this scarce resource on light tin and motorcycles is to commit a crime against logic. The economy of battle does not allow such luxury. 1 shell equals 1 heavy tank or fuel truck. The exchange rate must be maximally profitable. The vanguard passes right beneath them. The road curves, skirting the foot of the slope on which the KV-1 is hiding. The Germans are in the dead zone. If Remizov wanted to shoot now, he would have to lean out of the hatch with a grenade, because the gun simply won't depress to such an angle. But the Germans don't know that 47 tons of death hangs over their heads, just 30 meters vertically. The KV-1 is not a tank right now. It is a snowdrift. Overnight and through the morning, a blizzard buried the hull in snow, smoothing the angles of the turret and body. The gun barrel is wrapped in white rags. Pine boughs are thrown over the armor, blending with the forest background. The engine heat dissipated long ago, and even a thermal imager, had one existed in 1941, would not have detected them. The armor temperature equals the ambient temperature, -30. The tank is in a state of thermodynamic equilibrium with nature. It has become part of the landscape. Remizov watches the Germans' behavior. They are calm, too calm. This is the professional calm of conquerors confident in their rear and their reconnaissance. The road was checked by sappers an hour ago. No mines, no obstacles. The way to Moscow is open. The officer in the sidecar of the lead motorcycle even says something to the driver, pointing ahead. He does not look up at the overhanging slope. The geometry of his gaze is directed horizontally. A man rarely looks up without reason, especially when frost stiffens neck muscles and the steel rim of a helmet presses on the forehead. "Passing," the radio operator exhales. "They didn't spot us." The sound of engines recedes, fading around the bend. The smell of exhaust fumes reaches them, an acrid mix of synthetic gasoline and burnt oil. This smell penetrates even the tank's filters, irritating the nostrils. The smell of an alien civilization, technically perfect, methodical, and deadly. Now the silence returns, but it is different. It is not the silence of emptiness, but the silence before impact. The metronome in Remizov's head continues to count. Phase 1 complete. Reconnaissance allowed through. This means the main column will be given the signal, clear. They will move more boldly, more densely, closing the distance to pass the dangerous forest section quickly and break out into operational space. Loader, armor piercing, Remizov commands. Don't load it, keep it on the tray. A heavy clank is heard in the turret. The loader pulls a shell from the rack. It is cold, slippery with grease. The shell weighs over 6 kilograms. The metal burns hands even through mittens. The loader holds it suspended, ready to shove it into the breach at any second. His back muscles are tense. He, like the tank, is cocked. Remizov looks at his watch again. The second hand moves excruciatingly slowly, as if wading through the thick oil of time. The heartbeat in his ears drowns out all extraneous sounds. Thump, thump, thump. This is the rhythm of the mechanism called a human. But there are no emotions. Fear has frozen out. Only cold, crystal-clear concentration remains. Down below, in the defile, it is empty. But the forest around the road has already changed. It has ceased to be a neutral strip. Now it is a marked kill zone. Remizov remembers every landmark. The crooked birch, 300 meters. The boulder, 250. The shadow from the cliff, 150. Elevation and lead angles are calculated in advance. Ballistics are memorized. The rumble grows again. This time it is lower, deeper, more powerful. It is not the whine of motorcycles. It is the heavy, womb-like roar of hundreds of diesel and gasoline engines. The ground under the KV's tracks begins to vibrate slightly, transmitting the tremor to the crew's bodies. The beast walks. It is huge. It stretches for kilometers. It is confident in its invulnerability, and it is walking straight into the bottleneck that Remizov will cork in a few minutes. Attention all. The lieutenant's voice is dry, devoid of intonation. We work strictly according to the schematic. Driver, foot on the gas. On my signal, lunge. Not before. The driver nods, though no one sees it. His foot in the heavy boot freezes over the fuel pedal. He feels the resistance of the spring. Right now, he is the main element of the system. Whether the gravity trap works depends on his reaction. The tank must become an impulse, the strike of a hammer on the head of a nail. The vanguard has disappeared completely. The trap is ready to snap shut. All that remains is to wait for the enemy's body to fully enter the kill zone. Ilya Remizov, the engineer turned column killer, stares through the periscope with an unblinking gaze. He waits for physics to assert its rights. The main column is pulling into the defile. This is no longer recon. This is a river of steel. Heavy Opel Blitz trucks and 3-axle Krupps covered in grey canvas led the way. Under the canvas, infantry, crates of ammo, thermoses of ersatz coffee. Following them crawl fuel trucks, tankers on wheels filled with thousands of liters of flammable liquid. In the tail, the silhouettes of artillery tractors can be made out. They move tightly, bumper to bumper. The distance is reduced to a minimum. Drivers try to stay in the tracks of the vehicle ahead so as not to get bogged down in the loose snow of the shoulders. This is a fatal logistics error. On an icy road, in a narrow corridor between a wooded slope and a ravine, such traffic density violates all safety laws. But the German officers are in a hurry. Moscow is close. Orders drive them forward, forcing them to ignore regulation intervals. They create a single, continuous chain that only needs to be broken in one place to paralyze the entire mechanism. Ilya Remizov looks at this procession through the periscope. He doesn't see people. He sees masses, velocities, and vectors. The lead vehicle pulls even with the first sawed spruce. The trailing vehicles haven't entered the kill zone yet, but the core of the column, fuel trucks and trucks with infantry, is already here, right under the overhanging slope. They are trapped, but they don't know it yet. "Attention!" Remizov's voice is calm, like that of a dispatcher at a railway junction. "Driver, RPMs to maximum. Strike on readiness. Go." An explosion of activity occurs inside the tank. The driver depresses the clutch, slams into gear, and mashes the fuel pedal to the floor. 12 diesel cylinders howl, throwing a column of black soot into the sky. 47 tons of steel tear from their place. This is not a smooth start. It is a predator's lunge. Tracks, spinning for a moment, bite into the frozen ground, finding a foothold. The tank does not shoot. It hits with its hull. The KV-1 makes a sharp lunge backward, slamming its rear armor plate into the trunk of the nearest sawed spruce. The impact is dull, heavy, shaking the entire machine. The screech of metal against wood is heard, a sound that sets teeth on edge. But physics works flawlessly. The impulse of the multi-ton machine transfers to the tree. The fibers, already under critical tension, cannot hold. A crack rings out, resembling a dry cannon shot. It drowns out the noise of the engines on the road. The giant spruce, losing its support, begins to fall. It happens slowly, almost solemnly. Gravity asserts its rights, accelerating the mass of timber, 9.8 meters per second squared. The trunk describes an arc, gathering speed with every degree of the fall. But this is not a solitary fall. The crown of the first spruce, thick and heavy with snow, catches the second, neighboring spruce, also sawed in advance. The domino principle activates. The second spruce, receiving a side impact, snaps and hits the third. On the road below, truck drivers hear the crack. Someone looks up. Through the windshield, they see not sky, but a green wall falling on them from above. Human reaction lags. Time to realize the threat, 0.5 seconds. Time to press the brake pedal, another 0.5. But the inertia of loaded vehicles on ice cannot be cancelled. The first spruce crashes onto the cab of the lead Opel, an impact of monstrous force. The metal of the cab crumples like paper. The roof meets the driver's seat. Glass flies out in fine sprays, turning into icy crumbs. The truck stops instantly, as if hitting a concrete wall. Then the second spruce falls, blocking the road in the center of the column. It strikes the bed of a canvas-covered truck, breaking the frame arches and pinning the infantry to the floor. The third spruce covers the tail of the visible part of the column, cutting off retreat paths. Along with the trees, a snow avalanche comes down. A slab of snow 1/2 meter thick, disturbed by the vibration and the impact of the trunks, slides off the slope as a single mass. This is not soft fluff. This is hundreds of tons of packed, dense crust, mixed with ice blocks and stones. The white wave covers the road, burying vehicles that missed the impact of the trees. Visibility drops to 0. The air fills with snow dust that clogs lungs. Hell of inertia begins on the road. Drivers of the rear vehicles, seeing a wall of snow and trees before them, slam on the brakes. Wheels lock. On ice, this is fatal. Heavy trucks become uncontrollable sleds. They slide sideways, turning across the road. Rear vehicles smash into front ones. Bumpers bend, radiators burst, flooding the snow with boiling antifreeze. The screech of metal, the thunder of impacts, the screams of people. One of the fuel tankers, trying to avoid a collision, twists the wheel to the right. The heavy tanker, full of fuel, continues moving straight by inertia.
The vehicle skids, tips onto its side, sliding by inertia for another 10 meters and crashing into the blockage of trees. From above, from his position, Remizov watches the result. It is a picture of total chaos. Strict German order, Ordnung, is destroyed in 10 seconds. The straight lines of the column have turned into a pile of twisted metal. The geometry of movement is broken. The road, which a minute ago was a transport artery, has become a dead end. "Engine stop," commands Remizov. Inside the tank, it is quiet again. But outside, there is no more silence. Screams of the wounded, the strained howl of engines idling, and disorderly gunfire drift up from below. The Germans are panicking. They are shooting into the air, into the forest, into the white snow fog, trying to kill an invisible enemy. They do not understand what happened. Was it a mine? Partisans? An air raid?
It does not occur to them that they were stopped not by a company of soldiers, but by 3 trees and a precise calculation of vectors. They are fighting the consequences of gravity, trying to dig out vehicles and understand who is attacking them. Remizov wipes sweat from his forehead. It is -20 in the tank, but he is shivering from tension. Adrenaline crash. The first part of the plan is executed. The trap has snapped shut. The beast is immobilized, knocked off its feet, and disoriented. But the beast is still alive, and it is armed. Down below are hundreds of soldiers, machine guns, possibly anti-tank guns on trailers. The crew is silent. They hear the sounds from below. "Did it work, Comrade Lieutenant?" the loader asks in a whisper, pressing the armor-piercing shell to his chest like an infant. "We locked them in," Remizov answers, looking at his watch. "Now the work begins. They are standing still. They are excellent targets. We have 8 shells. Each one must hit a pressure point. We won't shoot at the infantry. We will hit the equipment. We must turn this jam into a dead knot they won't untie until spring." He presses against the sight. The snow dust has settled a bit. Now he sees the targets clearly. An overturned fuel truck, a lead tractor trying to back up, an APC stuck between 2 trucks. "Start it up," Remizov says quietly. "Time to add some fire to this ice." The KV engine comes alive again. Now the tank ceases to be a log and becomes a weapon. The turret slowly, with the heavy hum of the electric motor, turns to the left. The barrel of the F-32 gun lowers, groping for the first victim in the steel chaos below. Down in the icy trap, chaos reigns. German infantry, stunned by the falling trees and snow avalanche, start shooting. They fire blindly. Tracer bullets stitch the twilight, going into the white sky or biting into pine trunks. This is the shooting of fear. They don't see the adversary. They are fighting the forest, shadows, and their own terror of the unknown. MG. 34 gunners spray lead at the bushes on the slope, cutting branches but causing no harm to the steel monster lurking higher up. Inside the KV-1 turret, it is quiet. The clank of the breach sounds louder than the shots outside. Ilya Remizov is in no hurry. He has no right to suppression fire. He has no right to miss. In the ammo rack lie 8 arguments, 8 shells. This is not an ammo supply. These are precision instruments. Every shot must not just destroy a unit of equipment, but alter the geometry of the space, making exit from the trap physically impossible. "High explosive," Remizov commands. "Target, rock outcrop above the head of the column." The gunner spins the flywheels. The crosshairs settle not on the armor of a German tank, but on a granite slab hanging over the road, dusted with snow. This is an engineering solution. Why pierce the armor of one tank if you can bring down tons of stone on 3 vehicles at once? Fire! 76 millimeters of steel and explosives leave the barrel at a speed of 600 meters per second. Impact. A flash tears the gloom. The shell detonates in a crack in the rock, acting like a wedge. The frost has already done the preparatory work, widening the cracks with ice, and the TNT equivalent finishes the job. A stone cornice weighing several tons breaks away from the slope. Gravity catches the debris. The rockfall crashes down on the head of the column, right where the Germans were trying to pull apart the fallen trees. Boulders crush tractor cabs, tear tracks, press people into the frozen earth. This is not an artillery bombardment. It is a rock crusher. The road ahead is blocked permanently. Now it is not a traffic jam. It is a dead end. -1, Remizov states dryly. Armor piercing. Target fuel truck in the center. The second shell is sent into flight. Target, a tanker on an Opel Blitz chassis lying on its side, blocking the road. Hit. The kinetic energy of the slug punches through the thin steel of the tank. Metal-on-metal friction and the detonator spark ignite the gasoline fumes. The explosion is not instantaneous. First, the tank bloats from within due to the monstrous pressure of expanding gases. Then, the steel bursts at the seams, and a fireball erupts outward. The temperature at the epicenter jumps to 1,000 degrees. It is a thermodynamic shock. Burning gasoline flows across the road, running under the wheels of neighboring vehicles, melting rubber and turning ice into boiling water. A wall of fire cuts the column in half. Those in the tail cannot move forward. Those in the head are cut off from help. Panic below reaches its peak. People jump from burning trucks, rolling in the snow, trying to beat out the flames. The arithmetic of death, whispers the loader, sending the third shell into the breach. 2 shots. Column stopped. Remizov continues working. He systematically shoots the pain points of the German division. He doesn't look for easy targets. He hits where the damage will be maximum. The third shell strikes the track of a German Panzer III tank, trying to turn on a narrow patch. The track snaps. Inertia spins the tank, and it stops across the road, dead blocking movement for everyone behind. Now it is not a combat vehicle. It is 40 tons of immobile scrap metal, a barricade the Germans themselves cannot move. 4th, 5th, 6th shots. Remizov hits engines, drive wheels. He turns equipment into real estate. Shells tear metal, cause ammo detonations in supply trucks. The road turns into a fiery corridor. Black smoke mixes with steam, obscuring the view. But the engineer sees through the smoke. He remembers the map. He knows where the vehicles are standing. 7th. High explosive, into the scree on the left. A shot into the slope of the ravine triggers a landslide that drags a medical vehicle and a staff car down with it. The ground goes out from under the wheels, and the equipment slides down, flipping over and breaking the ice at the bottom of the stream. 1 shell remains. The last one. 8th. Remizov's voice sounds hollow. Save it. Below is hell. The Germans finally understand where death is striking from. Officers yell commands, pointing at the slope. The turrets of surviving tanks begin to turn toward the KV-1. Anti-aircraft guns traverse their barrels upward. Now they see him. A white ghost among black trunks. Return fire begins as a squall. 37mm shells rap against the frontal armor of the KV like hail on a tin roof. They cannot penetrate 75mm of hardened Soviet steel, but they knock out observation instruments, tear off track guards, and stun the crew. Inside the tank, there is a ringing.
Every impact of a slug is a sledgehammer blow to the head. "Commander, shells are out!" screams the loader. The tray is empty. Casings roll on the floor, clinking with every movement of the tank. Remizov pulls away from the site. The fire raid mission is accomplished. The resource is exhausted. The division is stopped, bisected, burning. But it is not destroyed. The enemy still has hundreds of guns, and Remizov has an empty breech and half a tank of diesel. The battle moves to a new phase, a phase where ballistics yields to the mechanics of solid bodies. "Driver," Remizov wipes blood flowing from an eyebrow cut on the site. "We are no longer artillery. We are a hammer." "What do we do, Commander?" "Down, straight at them, ramming speed." It sounds like madness. To descend into the very inferno under the guns of dozens of tanks and cannons. But Remizov calculates vectors. Staying on the slope means becoming a stationary target that will sooner or later be shot to pieces once a weak spot is found. Descending means using the tank's mass as a final weapon, a battering ram. "Clutch!" commands the lieutenant. "Forward! Crush them!" The KV-1 shudders. The tracks roll over the edge of the terrace. The machine's nose dips down. 47 tons begin sliding into the abyss to meet fire and metal. Gravity once again becomes the crew's main ally. The ice press begins its movement. The ammo rack is empty. The breech of the F-32 gun is now a useless piece of cold steel. There isn't a single cylinder in the trays. Only empty casings rolling on the ribbed floor of the fighting compartment, ringing at every jerk like a funeral bell. Silence hangs inside the turret, more terrifying than the roar of explosions. It is the silence of an exhausted resource. Ilya Remizov looks at the fuel gauge. The needle trembles at the red line. Diesel remains for 10 minutes of operation under load. A tank stripped of shells and fuel turns into a mass grave on the battlefield. A static target the enemy will methodically take apart piece by piece once the shock of the first strike passes. But Engineer Remizov knows, as long as mass has velocity, it is a weapon. The equation of kinetic energy requires no gunpowder. It needs only mass and velocity squared. "Driver, listen to my command." The lieutenant's voice in the headset sounds flat, stripped of human intonation. It is the voice of a hydraulic press operator. "Gun, locked. Crew, brace yourselves. Push against hands and feet. This is going to be rough." "Where to, Commander?" croaks the mechanic, wiping a mix of sweat and soot from his eyes. "Down, right into the center. Ram." The order contradicts the instinct of self-preservation. Descending from a commanding height into a cauldron teeming with enemy equipment is suicide. But it is the only solution to the equation in which the variable victory is still possible. The KV-1 must become a cork, a plug in the throat of the German offensive. "Go!" The mechanic stomps the fuel pedal. The tank, standing on the edge of the cliff, lurches. Tracks tear a layer of frozen earth, and 47 tons of steel begin moving down the 30-degree slope. The world in the periscope flips. The horizon disappears. Only the gray ribbon of the road below remains, clogged with equipment and black spots of craters. Gravity catches the machine. This is no longer controlled movement. It is a controlled fall. The acceleration of gravity multiplies by mass. The tank gathers speed frighteningly fast. 20 kilometers per hour, 30, 40. For the crew inside, the hell of centrifugal force begins. They are pressed into their seats, straps cut into their bodies. The clanking of tracks against stones turns into a continuous scream. The vehicle's hull groans. Seams experience critical tensile loads. But Soviet welding holds. Below, on the road,
A German Panzer III medium tank tries to turn to escape the zone of fire. Its commander sees a white mountain of metal flying at him from above, breaking brush and raising a snowstorm. He screams at his driver, but it is too late. The inertia of 47 tons cannot be stopped by a glance. Impact. It is not the sound of a car crash. It is the sound of a tectonic shift. The frontal plate of the KV-1, 75 millimeters thick, crashes into the side of the German III. The German tank weighs 22 tons. The Soviet one, 47. Plus the inertia of the downhill run. The laws of physics at this moment work against the Wehrmacht. The side armor of the Panzer III fails. It doesn't just bend, it bursts at the weld seams. Rivets fly out like bullets, turning into shrapnel. The German tank's road wheels are torn from their mountings. The track snaps with a deafening ring. The KV-1 does not stop. It acts like an icebreaker. It simply shoves the German machine off the road, crushing it like a tin can. Inside the KV, the crew is thrown forward. Remizov hits his helmet on the sight. His vision goes dark, but his consciousness registers, we are still moving. The impulse is not spent. The tank, having rammed the III, continues sliding by inertia. In its path is an Opel staff bus. The driver managed to jump out a second ago. The KV-1 doesn't even notice the obstacle. Heavy tracks grind the tin of the body, turning the vehicle into a flat pancake of metal, glass, and rubber. Only a short crunch is heard, like the sound of a dry branch breaking, the truck frame snapping. Enemy equipment flies into the ditch. The KV-1 works like a bulldozer of the apocalypse. It clears space, filling it with itself. The screech of metal on metal drowns out all battle sounds. It is a symphony of destruction written in the language of structural mechanics. Finally, inertia runs out. The tank, having plowed deep furrows in the asphalt and frozen ground with its tracks, freezes across the road. It stands perfectly. The nose is wedged against the cliff. The stern hangs over the ravine where it just shoved the remains of the German vanguard. The engine dies. The impact was of such force that fuel lines were likely severed, or the cutoff simply tripped. Ringing silence sets in inside, interrupted only by the heavy breathing of men and the crackle of cooling metal. "Alive?" Remizov's voice rasps. He tries to move his neck, painful, but the vertebrae are intact. "Seems intact," the radio operator responds, rubbing a bruised shoulder. "Just clacked my teeth, almost bit my tongue off." Remizov looks through the periscope. The glass is cracked, a web obscuring the view, but he sees the main thing. The road is blocked. 47 tons of dead steel lie across the only artery. Moving this carcass without heavy tractors is impossible. Blow it up? That would require hours of sapper work and hundreds of kilograms of explosives. Go around? To the left is a sheer cliff. To the right is a drop-off clogged with mangled equipment. It is checkmate. The chess game is over. The pieces have been swept from the board by brute force. "Hatch is locked," commands Remizov. "Now they'll wake up." Movement begins outside. The Germans, realizing the avalanche has stopped, come out of their stupor. Infantrymen run toward the tank. They don't know yet that the crew is alive. They think that after such an impact, there are only corpses inside. They want to inspect the Soviet monster that buried their hopes for a quick march. But the KV-1 is not dead. It simply changed its state of matter. From a mobile firing point, it turned into a long-term defensive fortification. A fort. A bunker. A citadel. Remizov pulls his TT pistol from its holster. The loader places F1 grenades next to himself. The radio operator checks the disc of the DT machine gun.
There is little air left in the tank. It is saturated with the smell of burnt friction lining and gunpowder fumes. But this air is now more precious than gold. "Prepare for defense," the lieutenant says quietly. "We have become a bone in their throat. Now they will try to cough us out. But they'll break their teeth." He looks at his watch. Only 20 minutes of combat have passed, but it feels like an eternity. The division is standing. The Wehrmacht's schedule is wrecked. Now every hour they hold out in this steel box will cost the Germans hundreds of liters of fuel and nerves. A blow on the armor from outside, the butt of a German rifle. "Hey, Ivan! Kaput! Come out!" Someone yells in broken Russian. Remizov grins. The grin of an engineer who knows that the hatch armor thickness is 30 millimeters, and the muzzle velocity of a German submachine gun bullet is insufficient for penetration. "Not kaput," he whispers. "This is just the beginning of the stress test." He nods to the radio operator. The man inserts the barrel of the machine gun into the embrasure of the turret's rear niche. A short burst cuts the frosty air, knocking the arrogance out of the uninvited guests. The Germans jump back, falling into the snow. The war continues. But now it is happening at arm's length. The distance between life and death is measured by the thickness of an armor plate. The V2K engine is dead. 12 cylinders that just a minute ago put out 500 horsepower are now just a pile of cooling cast iron and aluminum. A special kind of silence descends inside the tank. It is the silence of a crypt. The only sound is the crackling of the cooling manifold and the heavy, rasping breathing of 4 men. The heating system in the KV-1 is constructively absent. Heat came only from the motor and the gun breech. Now that source has run dry. The armored hull, possessing high thermal conductivity, instantly begins to suck out the remaining heat. The temperature inside the fighting compartment drops rapidly, striving to equalize with the outside. -30 degrees. Walls cover with frost right before their eyes. Breath becomes thick as smoke. Now the tank is not a machine. It is a steel pillbox grown into the ice and asphalt, deprived of the ability to maneuver. A fortress of a few square meters. "Movement outside," hisses the radio operator, pressing his headset, though the radio is silent. He hears the vibration of the hull. Someone is walking on the armor. Heavy, hobnailed German boots clatter on the turret roof. This sound is unmistakable. A brazen, proprietary walk. The Germans assure that after such a ramming, the crew is either dead or unconscious. They want to take a trophy. They want to open the hatch and drag out the Ivans to look at the madmen who stopped a division. Ilya Remizov raises his eyes to the turret ceiling. The hatch is dogged down tight. But the enemy doesn't know that inside are not concussed victims, but angry engineers backed into a corner. "Fire through the ports," Remizov commands in a whisper. The sides and rear of the KV-1 turret have embrasures for firing personal weapons, closed by armored plugs. Remizov unscrews a plug. A beam of light and icy wind burst into the narrow opening. He sees a fragment of a grey greatcoat. A German soldier stands on the fender, trying to pry open the commander's hatch with a crowbar. The lieutenant pushes the barrel of his TT pistol into the hole. Distance, 0 meters. He doesn't aim. Ballistics aren't needed here. He simply pulls the trigger. The crack of the shot in the confined space hits the ears like a hammer. The casing clinks on the floor. A cry and the sound of a falling body are heard outside. A heavy sack of bones and flesh rolls down the armor to the ground. This serves as a signal. The illusion of a dead tank is dispelled. The Germans understand. The beast is alive, and it bites. The assault that begins turns into a chaotic, furious attempt to crack the steel box by any means. Bullets start hammering on the armor. They can't pierce 75 millimeters of steel, but they search for vulnerabilities. Vision slits, joints, observation instruments. Lead splinters and glass spray fly inside through microscopic gaps, biting into the tankers' faces. "Grenades!" yells the driver. A clatter on the roof. Something round and metallic rolls across the armor plates. A German M24 hand grenade, a potato masher. The explosion thunders outside, right on the engine compartment louvers. The tank shudders like a bell struck by a sledgehammer. The shockwave doesn't pierce the armor, but the acoustic blow inside is monstrous. Blood runs from ears. Dust, accumulated on internal surfaces over months of fighting, flies into the air, clogging eyes. "They're crawling under the tracks! They want to blow the belly!" screams the loader. His face is covered in blood. A periscope shard slashed his forehead, but he feels no pain. Adrenaline works as anesthesia. Remizov understands the enemy tactic. The Germans can't penetrate the front or side, so they will try to get them through the floor or running gear. Sappers are probably already dragging bundles of grenades. "Open the escape hatch in the floor," commands the lieutenant. "No, wait, don't open it. They could toss one in. We work through the top." He grabs an F1 grenade, a lemon. The ribbed cast iron body cools his palm. Remizov pulls the pin. The safety lever springs off.
"Loader, cover the hatch."
The loader cracks the turret hatch exactly a palm's width. Outside, bullets immediately start whistling. The Germans are waiting. Remizov, without sticking out, counts 2 seconds and tosses the grenade out, simply opening his fingers. It rolls down the sloped armor of the turret, right under the feet of the assault group swarming by the tracks. "Hatch!" Remizov jerks the loader down by his jacket. The lid slams shut. Explosion. Cast iron fragments slash the German infantry hiding in the tank's dead zone. Screams of the wounded drown out the shooting. Their own armor protects the crew from their own shrapnel. This is brutal, contact combat. The tank has turned into a bunker conducting all-around defense. Inside, it becomes impossible to breathe. The air is a poisonous mixture. The sweetish smell of burnt gunpowder, the acrid stench of burnt oil seeping from the engine compartment, and the heavy metallic smell of fresh blood. Ventilation is not working. There is no strength left to rotate the turret manually. The traverse mechanism feels like it's filled with concrete. They are locked in a steel coffin, but this coffin continues to snap back. The loader slides down the gun breech to the floor. He presses his hand to his stomach. His jacket is soaked with something dark and sticky. A stray bullet or fragment that flew into the slit when the hatch was opened got him. "Sergei!" The radio operator rushes to him, trying to get out a field dressing packet. The fabric of the packet is frozen and won't tear. He has to gnaw it with his teeth. "It's okay," whispers the loader, his lips turning blue from cold and blood loss. "It's okay, Commander." Remizov looks at him. The engineer's gaze registers damage. Abdominal wound, shock, hypothermia. Chances without a hospital? 0. There will be no hospital. There will only be cold metal and German grenades. But in the dying man's eyes, there is no terror. There is a grim, stubborn triumph. The loader turns his head with difficulty toward the periscope, behind which only soot and twisted metal of the German column are visible. "We locked them in, Comrade Lieutenant," he wheezes, and pink foam bubbles on his lips. "Look how they stopped. Beautifully stopped. They'll be clearing this pile up for a week to get to Moscow. A week. And by then the Siberians will arrive." It is true. Remizov realizes the scale of what has been done. The KV-1, standing across the road, blocked not just passage, it created a logistical clot. To remove 47 tons of steel without cranes and tractors,
The Germans will have to blow the tank apart, piece by piece. And that is time. Precious time the Wehrmacht does not have. Every minute of delay here, on the cold road near Volokholamsk, converts into kilometers the enemy did not traverse. Hold on, Sergei. Remizov squeezes the soldier's shoulder. You're right. We did our job.
Now the main thing is not to surrender the object ahead of time. The lieutenant grabs his TT again. 3 rounds left in the magazine. He reloads the weapon, inserting a new clip with icy, unbending fingers. Fine motor skills are failing. His hands shake not from fear, but from hypothermia. His body is racked with violent shivering. The organism burns its last calories trying to warm internal organs. Outside, a lull. The Germans have receded, leaving several bodies in grey-green uniforms by the tracks. The infantry attack choked. Grenades didn't help. Small arms are useless. Now they will change tactics. Remizov knows what comes next. They will bring up heavy artillery, or anti-aircraft guns. Everyone check personal weapons, he orders. His voice sounds hollow, as if from a barrel. Prepare grenades for combat. If they climb inside, we blow ourselves up with them. The tank is not to be surrendered to the enemy. That is an order. The crew nods silently. There is no fatalism in this, only pragmatism. Surrender is meaningless. Leaving the vehicle is impossible. Only the function of holding the position remains until the complete exhaustion of the crew's biological resource. The KV-1 stands motionless, black with soot, pitted by bullets, covered in snow and corpses. It looks like part of the cliff, like an ancient megalith that has stood here for centuries and will stand forever. Inside this block of ice, 3 hearts beat, and 1 is fading. The fortress on tracks prepares for the final assault. The infantry retreats. Gray figures in greatcoats dissolve into the twilight, leaving motionless bodies and black soot stains on the snow. The shooting dies down, as if someone switched off the breaker of war. But this silence is scarier than the roar. It is not a truce. It is a change of tools. Ilya Remizov knows what this means. If a hammer doesn't drive the nail, they get a sledgehammer. Through the narrow slit of the periscope, frosted over with patterns, he sees movement deep in the German column. A tractor, a semi-tracked Sonderkraftfahrzeug 7, roaring with a powerful engine, turns around on a cleared patch. It drags something long, predatory, covered in a canvas cover. The barrel points to the sky, but now they will lower it to the earth. 88, Remizov says quietly. His lips barely move. They have lost sensitivity and become hard as rubber. It is a death sentence. 8,8, 88 millimeters. The Flak anti-aircraft gun, which the Germans learned to use as the most terrifying anti-tank weapon of this war. The ballistics of this gun are flawless. Muzzle velocity, about 1,000 meters per second. At this range, 200 meters, an armor-piercing shell from the anti-aircraft gun won't just penetrate the frontal armor of the KV-1. It will punch through it, exiting the rear, retaining enough kinetic energy to smear the crew against the back wall of the turret. Against this crowbar, Soviet steel has no defense. 75 millimeters of armor for an 88 is cardboard. Remizov looks at his watch. The glass face is cracked, but the mechanism works. 12 hours have passed since they drove the tank onto the slope. 12 hours. Half a day. In the scale of the universe, a blink. In the scale of war, an eternity. In these 12 hours, the German division should have covered 40 kilometers, captured 2 settlements, and reached the attack line. Instead, it stands here in an icy ravine, licking its wounds, pulling apart the burnt skeletons of its vehicles, and wasting precious fuel on heating.
Operation Barbarossa's schedule is broken. Strategic tempo is lost. Thousands of soldiers, hundreds of tanks and guns were taken out of the war by 4 men and 1 machine.
This is an efficiency coefficient any engineer strives for. Maximum result with minimum resource expenditure.
Commander, what is it?
The radio operator's voice is weak, barely discernible.
He sits on the floor, leaning back against the radio box. His eyes are closing. Hypothermia. The cold kills them slower than the Germans, but just as surely. The tanker's body temperature has dropped to critical levels. The shivering has passed, replaced by dangerous, viscous apathy. Blood thickens. The heart slows its rhythm, trying to save the remaining heat for the brain. Sleep seems like salvation, a sweet, warm exit into nothingness. But sleeping is forbidden. "Flak gun," answers Remizov. "They are rolling out the main caliber." He watches the German crew work with the gun. Sharp, coordinated, no fuss. The side outriggers fold down. Screwjacks are turned, leveling the carriage on the uneven road. The barrel slowly lowers to the horizon. The black muzzle begins to seek them.
It is a duel where one opponent holds a sniper rifle and the other is bound and unarmed.
Remizov realizes they have about 5 minutes left, maybe 7. While the Germans set the level, bring up shells, while the gunner catches the motionless KV turret in the crosshairs. "How is Sergei?" asks the lieutenant. The driver, turning his head with difficulty, looks at the loader. The man lies motionless, face buried in his knees. On his jacket is a frozen crust of dark brown. "Sergei's gone cold," the driver says simply. There is no grief in his voice, only a statement of fact. Death here is as much a detail of the landscape as the snow or trees. Finished suffering. Remizov nods. He pulls a pencil stub from his map case. The lead is broken. He has to write by scratching the paper with the wood. The paper is the back of a death notification he never sent to his platoon leader's mother. Fingers disobey. He has to grip the pencil in his fist like a child's shovel. He is not writing a will. He is writing a report. A short, dry report for those who will find them in the spring. If they find them. If the metal doesn't burn and the paper doesn't rot. There were 4 of us. Lieutenant Remizov, Sergeant Gavrilov, Private Bilov, Private Kuzmin. Tank KV-1, number 442. Took defensive positions November 7th. Ammo expended completely. Destroyed. Tanks, 2. Fuel trucks, 3. Trucks, 4. Column stopped. Dying, but not surrendering. Did not disgrace the motherland. The handwriting is crooked. Letters jump. The pencil tears the paper. Remizov rolls the sheet into a tube. He looks around for a container. His gaze falls on a spent casing from a 76mm shell, a brass cylinder, still smelling of burnt gunpowder. He shoves the note inside. Then he takes a wooden plug whittled from a crate fragment and forcefully drives it into the casing neck, hammering it with the pistol grip. "Time capsule," he grins.
He puts the casing in his tunic pocket, over his heart. There it might survive, even if his body turns to ash. Outside, the clang of a breech block is heard, an iron, heavy sound that carries even through armor and cotton in ears. The German anti-aircraft gun is loaded. 88 millimeters of death are ready for launch. "Well, that's it, men," says Remizov. "Thank you for your service." "And thank you, Comrade Lieutenant," whispers the radio operator. "I didn't think it would be like this." "It's a good way," interrupts the driver. He tries to smile, but the skin on his face is tight and unresponsive. "We beat them. We beat them with physics. They used force on us, and we used mind on them." There is no pathos in this,
It is professional pride. They do not feel like victims. They are victors who simply exhausted their resource. Like an engine that ran at limit RPMs and burned out, but pulled the car out of the swamp. Remizov presses against the periscope again.
He wants to look death in the face. He will not close his eyes.
The barrel of the German gun looks straight at the bridge of his nose, a black hole from which darkness will fly out any moment. He sees the hand of the German non-commissioned officer raised. Now it will drop. The command, "Feuer!" There is no fear. Adrenaline burned out long ago. Only infinite fatigue and a strange, light calm remain. He did everything he could. The mission is accomplished. The equation is solved. The answer is obtained. And that answer is 12 hours of silence on the Moscow direction. 12 hours of life for the capital. He remembers his 9th grade physics textbook. Chapter, Dynamics. Newton's third law. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. They became that reaction. The friction force that stopped the steel roller. The German officer's hand drops sharply. A long tongue of flame bursts from the flak gun's barrel. The muzzle brake throws gases to the sides, raising clouds of snow dust. The tank shudders, but Remizov no longer hears the sound of the impact. Time stops for him a fraction of a second before the tungsten core of the shell touches the frontal armor. The light goes out. Only cold, eternal physics remains. Spring, 1942. March. The time when war changes color. The white, sterile shroud of winter peels away, exposing dirty, wounded earth. Snow turns into gray slush mixed with fuel oil and soot. Roads dissolve, becoming traps for equipment. But now the tracks of Soviet tanks heading west bite into this mud. At the 42nd kilometer of the Volokolamsk highway, a column of Studebakers stops. The road is blocked. Ahead is a jam that couldn't be cleared all winter. This spot is marked with a red cross on sapper maps as a high danger zone. It smells of wet iron, rotting rubber, and meltwater washing away traces of the great battle from the soil. Engineering Company Commander Captain Gromov jumps off the truck running board. His boots squelch in the spring mire. He walks to the edge of the ravine and stops. A panorama of a vehicle graveyard opens before him. But this is not a usual battlefield where machines are scattered chaotically by explosions. This place looks like the result of a man-made disaster, precisely planned and brilliantly executed. In the center of the composition stands the tank, KV-1 number 442. In 4 months, it has changed. Fire and time have eaten the white winter paint, exposing metal now covered in a thick layer of red rust. The tank has grown into the ground up to the fenders. It stands across the road, nose wedged against the cliff, stern hanging over the abyss. It looks like a dead breakwater against which the steel wave of the Wehrmacht crashed. Around it is chaos. Skeletons of German Opel trucks, APCs, light tanks, all thrown into ditches, flattened, torn apart. The Germans tried to pull this pile-up apart in winter, but apparently abandoned the idea. The equipment froze, grew into the ice, and retreating Wehrmacht units simply set fire to what they couldn't evacuate. Gromov is an experienced engineer. He sees war not as heroism, but as the work of forces and moments. He lights a cigarette, shielding the flame with his palm from the damp wind, and begins reading the traces. For him, this pile of metal is an open book. "Comrade Captain," approaches a sergeant, the sapper platoon leader. "Doesn't smell like mines here. Something heavier did the work. Look at the trees." The sergeant points to the stumps of ancient spruces sticking out on the slope. Gromov walks closer. He runs his hand over the cut. The wood has darkened from moisture, but the geometry of the cut is preserved perfectly. "That's not a shell," says Gromov, exhaling smoke. "And not shrapnel. That's a saw. Two-man crosscut. They worked calmly, methodically.
Undercut on one side, wedge on the other. He shifts his gaze to the road. He sees the whole picture. 3 trees falling in a cascade. The tank standing higher on the slope, then rolling down. The trace of a ram on the side of a German 3 lying upside down in the ravine. The German tank's side is caved in half a meter. A shell cannot deliver such a blow. That is a kinetic mass strike. "They didn't shoot," the captain says quietly. Or rather, they didn't only shoot. They brought the forest down on them. Gromov climbs onto the KV armor. The metal is cold, rough with corrosion. On the frontal plate gapes a neat hole with melted edges, 88 millimeters in diameter. Entry hole. No exit. The anti-aircraft shell stayed inside, turning the fighting compartment into a furnace. The captain looks into the open driver's hatch. Inside, blackness. Water stands at the bottom of the hull. Debris, casings, scraps of burnt canvas float in it. No human remains are visible. Burial teams must have already worked here, or the fire left nothing but ash. But Gromov is looking for something else. He is looking for logic. He sees empty shell racks, not a single slug. "Empty," he states. "They went into the attack empty." "How empty?" The sergeant standing below is surprised. "To ram?" "To ram," the captain nods. "Look at the trajectory. They stood up there, commanding height. They could have sat in defense until fuel ran out. But they drove down. Why?" Gromov reconstructs the chronology. Shells ran out. Germans started clearing the blockage. If the tank stayed up top, the column would pass. The crew made the decision to turn the machine itself into a bolt. "He used gravity," Gromov slaps his palm on the rusty turret. "He had no gunpowder, so he took physics as an ally. Accelerated 47 tons and hit like a hammer. And then stood here like a bone in the throat." The sappers are silent. They are used to seeing death, but here they see the work of intellect. This commands special respect among technicians. There was no hysteria here, no senseless self-sacrifice. Here was cold, angry calculation. The KV-1 here is not a victim. It is a victor who simply used its resource to the last gram. "Look!" The sergeant picks up a strange object from the ground. It is a track link torn in half. Steel a finger thick, snapped like thread. "What kind of impact force was that?" "Calculated," answers Gromov. "Ultimate for this grade of steel." The captain climbs down from the armor. He walks around the tank. On the stern, near the exhaust pipes, he notices an inscription. Someone scratched it on the armor, perhaps with a bayonet while the metal was still hot. Or maybe our scouts did it later? No, the letters are almost erased by rust, but legible. For M. The rest is illegible. For Moscow? For Mom? For Mir? Peace/world? It doesn't matter. What matters is what stands before them. A monument to engineering thought. A trap that worked even after the designer's death. Gromov looks at the German equipment rotting in the ravine. Dozens of trucks, tanks, APCS, an entire battalion tactical group that simply ceased to exist as a combat unit because one lieutenant correctly calculated tree fall vectors
and his tank's point of force application. "What do we do, Comrade Captain?" asks the sergeant. "Drag it off? Need to clear the road." Gromov shakes his head. "Tractors won't budget. It's grown in solid, fused. We'll blast the cliff next to it, widen the passage. But him, don't touch him. Let him stand." He takes out a map and makes a mark. Not a red danger cross, but a landmark star. "This is no longer an obstacle, Sergeant. It is a foundation. The Germans broke their teeth on it, and we will walk this road to Berlin." "Understood," nods the sergeant.
Detour it is. The sappers disperse, starting to unroll wires and place charges in the rocky soil of the slope to widen the road around the steel giant. And the KV-1 remains standing, rusty, terrible, majestic in its silence. Snow melts around it, and water runs down the armor like tears. But that is just physics. Phase transition from solid to liquid. A tank does not weep. A tank completed its mission. The spring sun reflects in puddles where oil and water mix, creating rainbow films. Nature takes its own, absorbing the traces of war. But this scar, a rusty hull across the road, will remain here for a long time. As a reminder that mass multiplied by velocity and courage yields an absolute value of impassibility. Present day, Volokholamsk Highway, the M9 Baltia route. The asphalt here is perfect, markings crisp as a textbook geometry drawing. A stream of cars rushes west and east at a speed of 110 kilometers per hour. Semis, sedans, crossovers. For drivers, this stretch of road is just another segment of the journey between Moscow and Riga. Mile marker 114. Here, drivers usually slow down, not because of speed cameras, but because of what stands on the right, on a high concrete pedestal. A KV-1 tank. It is not that same machine number 442. The original was melted down by time and metallurgical plants long ago, becoming part of new bridges and rebar. This is a monument symbol. But it stands exactly where, 80-odd years ago, Lieutenant Ilya Remizov drew a diagram of falling trees in his mind. The geometry of the terrain hasn't changed. The same steep wooded slope hanging over the road, the same deep ravine on the left, along the bottom of which a stream now flows, washing rusty casings out of the clay. A yellow school bus stops at the foot of the monument. Teenagers pour out, 7th or 8th grade. They are noisy, smartphones in hands, headphones in ears. For them, 1941 is ancient history, like the Punic Wars or Caesar's legions, an abstraction from a history textbook paragraph. The tour guide, an elderly man in a strict jacket, does not look like a regular guide. He has the bearing of a retired officer and the voice of a man used to giving commands through radio static. He doesn't start with pathetic poems. He doesn't speak of sacred sacrifice. He walks to the concrete parapet and points a hand at the forest. "Put away the phones," he says dryly, "and look at the elevation profile. See the climb angle? 30 degrees. Now imagine you are sitting in a tin can weighing 47 tons. You have no fuel. You have no shells. Below are 2,000 armed enemies. Your actions?" The teenagers fall silent. The question is posed not as an ethical dilemma, but as an engineering problem. "Surrender?" Someone from the back rows suggests uncertainly. "Incorrect answer." The guide cuts him off. Surrender is a loss of resource, and a resource must work until total exhaustion. Lieutenant Remizov was an engineer. He looked at this forest not as scenery, but as a warehouse of construction materials. He looked at his tank not as a weapon, but as a weight,
The guide leads the group to the edge of the platform. Look here. See these old spruces? They are 100 years old. Now look at the trunks. See the scars? He points to characteristic bark growths at a height of 2 meters. Those are shrapnel wounds. The tree healed them, covered them in resin, but the metal remained inside. The forest remembers. In 41, they didn't just shoot here. Physics worked here. Remizov used inertia, gravity, and leverage. He turned the forest into an avalanche. He turned the tank into a press. He stopped a mechanized division having nothing but knowledge of strength of materials and cold blood. The students look at the slope differently. They begin to see not just trees, but vectors. They imagine huge trunks falling onto the road, blocking traffic. It is no longer boring history. It is action based on reality. The Russian soldier, continues the guide, looking at the tank armor on the pedestal, does not fight with numbers. He fights with skill. Ingenuity is not just cunning. It is the ability to find a non-standard solution in conditions of critical resource deficit. The Germans acted by the book. Ours acted by the situation. The manual lost to intellect. The wind stirs wreaths at the base. Ribbons have faded in the sun, but the inscriptions read clearly. To the engineers of the Great Patriotic War. To the crew of the KV-1. People bring not just flowers here. On the granite lie casings found by search teams in the forest, rusty track links, pieces of armor. These are physical evidence. Artifacts of a feat calculated with mathematical precision. The guide pauses, letting the noise of the highway fill the space. A heavy truck rushes by, and the ground under their feet vibrates slightly. "Feel the tremor?" he asks. "That is how the earth trembled when the KV-1 went for the ram. 47 tons, accelerated by freefall, possess colossal kinetic energy." Remizov knew this. He didn't become a hero by accident. He engineered his feat. He calculated his death so it would cost the enemy the maximum price. This is called efficiency. And for Remizov's crew, that efficiency was infinite. The tour ends. The children return to the bus, but they are not so noisy anymore. Someone looks back at the green slope and the gray tank turret. A simple but hard thought has settled in their heads. The winner is not the one with the bigger gun, but the one who thinks better. Intellect is the main weapon, and physics is the main ally of the one who knows its laws. The bus drives away, dissolving into the stream of cars. The tank remains. It stands an eternal watch, turret turned to the west. Its cannon looks to the side from where trouble once came. Now there is a peaceful sunset, coloring the clouds in the colors of tempered metal. The forest around the pedestal rustles in the wind. Old pines and spruces that survived that winter creak their trunks. If one listens closely, in this creaking one can hear the echo of 1941. The clanking of tracks, the crack of breaking wood, commands in Russian and German, and the silence that comes after battle. The native land helped the defenders not because of mysticism, but because they knew it. They knew how the soil behaves at -30. They knew how thick the ice on the stream was. They knew the tensile strength of wood. The earth was their blueprint, their bridgehead, their weapon. The Germans came here as conquerors, trying to subdue nature by force. Ours lived here, being part of this nature, and nature reciprocated, bringing down the full weight of its laws upon the enemy. The sun sets behind the horizon. Shadows from the trees lengthen, crossing the road with black stripes resembling boom barriers. The cold concrete of the pedestal cools, giving up the heat accumulated during the day. The KV-1 tank, the iron ghost of the engineering corps, continues its watch. Its crew long ago became part of history, part of the soil, part of memory. But the equation they solved at the cost of their lives remains true forever. Force is mass times acceleration. Victory is will times reason. Night covers the Volokholamsk highway. Headlights ignite, forming an endless river of light. Life continues. And that is the main proof that Lieutenant Ilya Remizov's calculation was correct.